The Czech village of Lidice is located 20 kilometers west of Prague. The main occupation of the male population of the village was work in the mine. Women were engaged in housekeeping and, as they would say now, in the service sector. In other words, it was an ordinary, unremarkable mining village that survived the German occupation of Czechoslovakia in March 1939. Or rather, it survived the occupation of what was left of Czechoslovakia, since Germany took away the Sudetenland back in 1938. During 1938, Poland took over the Cieszyn region and Hungary took over Carpathian Ruthenia. After March 1939, the Czech state ceased to exist. Slovakia declared the so-called independence, becoming a puppet state under the Reich. And on the territory of the Czech Republic, Hitler established the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia. Since German industry needed coal, life in the mining village of the Czech Republic did not change much after the occupation. The Germans, of course, immediately began to look around for Jews and communists. However, there were not many of them in the villages of this kind. So until June 1942, the residents of Lidice did not experience any serious problems with the new government, except perhaps moral ones. After all, they had lost the independence of their country. However, by the spring of 1942, small groups appeared in the surrounding forests. These were not yet partisans, but simply people hiding from deportation to Germany or to the front. The attitude of residents of surrounding villages towards such neighbors was ambiguous. On the one hand, apparently the majority of the population sympathized with them, but there were also those who believed that these so-called partisans would bring trouble on them. So it turned out that they were right about the trouble, although these so-called partisans had nothing to do with the events that took place in June 1942. Hitler's favorite. In September 1941, Hitler appointed the head of the Reich Security Main Office, RSHA, SS Obergruppenführer, Colonel General Reinhard Heydrich, Imperial Protector of Bohemia and Moravia, while retaining his former post. Heydrich, despite being Himmler's deputy, played a very important and quite independent role in the Nazi leadership. Hitler respected him, and even Himmler did not make important decisions without consulting Heydrich. This Nazi boss was in fact one of the main organizers of the final solution to the Jewish question, as well as the organization of concentration camps and a conductor of a hard line to suppress any, even the slightest dissatisfaction with the policy of the German authorities in the occupied lands. Having headed the territory of Bohemia and Moravia, Czech Republic, Heydrich sharply strengthened the punitive methods of managing the lands under his control, and also to pump out all possible resources from the Czech Republic, primarily the products of military enterprises. On his initiative, the former Prime Minister of Czechoslovakia, Lidice, suspected of having connections with the former President of Czechoslovakia, Beneš, was executed. For the brutal suppression of the resistance forces in Bohemia, his role in the organization of ghettos in concentration camps, the head of the Czech government in exile, Edvard Beneš, and the leader of Czech underground, František Moravec, chose Heydrich as a legitimate target of the Czech underground. After the goal was approved, the Czech leadership turned to the British government for help. At that time, immigrants from Czechoslovakia also served in the British Special Operations Executive, SOE. The British approved Moravec's plan and sent 9 trained agents to the Czech Republic to carry out the operation. The group was led by the Josef Gabčík and Jan Kubis. Operation Anthropoid. The transfer of the main group of Czech patriots took place on December 29, 1941. The saboteurs, in addition to eliminating the Reich protector, also had to kill the collaborator, Emanuel Moravec. The first group of Kubits and Gabčík, due to a pilot error, was dropped in the wrong place. At the same time, Gabčík also injured his leg. The scouts had to take refuge with the local residents who did not give them away. A few days later, the rest of the scouts was sent to help them. Finally, it became possible to track down and establish the time and route of movement of the Reich protector. On the morning of May 27, 1942, Heydrich was traveling to Prague from his country house. The main Nazi of the Czech Republic traveled in his car, without guards, with only a driver. In the suburb of Prague, Lipin, unexpectedly Gabčík blocked the car's path with a submachine gun and tried to open fire, but the weapon jammed. And then Heydrich made a fatal mistake. Instead of ordering the driver to move at full speed, he stopped the car, took out a pistol, and together with the driver began to shoot at Gabčík. At that moment, Kubis threw a grenade at Heydrich's open Mercedes. However, he missed a little. The grenade fell near the car and rolled under the wheel. Heydrich was wounded by the explosion and fell near the car. Kubis himself was also wounded by shrapnel. Heydrich's driver, Klein, began to pursue the wounded Gabchik. Gabchik ran into the butcher shop, but its owner refused to hide him. In the course of shootout, Gabchik wounded Klein and still managed to escape pursuit. Consequences. The German authorities responded to the assassination attempt with their usual cruelty. When the police were scouring all the villages around Prague in search of saboteurs and partisans, the mining village of Lidice had the misfortune of falling into their side. A state of emergency was declared in the Czech Republic. The new rights protector, SS Obergruppenführer Kurt Deluge, took the most stringent measures in finding the participants in the assassination attempt and punishing all those involved in it, and those not involved too. While the search for saboteurs was going on, the fascist leadership needed someone who could be demonstratively punished so that it could teach others a lesson. Hitler demanded revenge from Deluge, and revenge followed. A terrible revenge. On the night of June 9th, 10 units of the SS division Prince Eugen, under the command of Hauptsturmführer Max Rastak, surrounded Lidice and in the morning began their bloody execution. Czech gendarmes were also present in Lidice. Whether they took part in the massacre of their fellow people or just stood around the village has not been established. The SS began the methodical destruction of the village and its inhabitants. People were kicked out of their homes and immediately sorted, men and women separately, and children taken to the other side. The village was filled with screams and moans of women, children crying, and harsh commands of the punishers. All men aged 15 and over, in the amount of 173 people, were taken to the area of the farm and shot there. They were shot in groups one by one. The Germans fired from machine guns and rifles. Many women were subjected to violence. 203 women and 105 children were sent to the neighboring town of Kladno. From there, the women were sent to the Ravensbrück concentration camp and the children to the Chelmno concentration camp. A sorting was carried out among the children. 23 children with Aryan appearance were selected. They were sent to a boarding school in order to then be assigned to German families and raise them to be true Aryans. The remaining 82 boys and girls were strangled by the Nazis in a gas chamber. In the village itself, the Germans blew up and burned houses, uprooted trees with the help of machinery, killed all the cattle and all the dogs and cats. It was a kind of ritual of retribution. According to the instruction of the SS Gruppenführer and the chief of police of Prague, Karl Hermann Frank, nothing was supposed to remind of the existence of this village. This was ordered by Hitler himself. By the way, on the same day in France, the village of Oridor-sur-Glane was completely destroyed. All the residents, 642 people, were killed. It was similar but slightly different story. Fascists acted in the same way everywhere. The reason for choosing this unfortunate village was allegedly that one of the group of underground fighters who were preparing the assassination attempt of Heydrich was from that place. Most likely, the Nazis did not need a special reason. Residents of Lidice became hostages of lawlessness, and the village itself became a symbol of fascist atrocities. However, it should be said that in fact many more people paid the price for the assassination attempt. Within a few days after the assassination, 157 people were shot in all cities of the Czech Republic, primarily in Prague. 3,000 representatives of Czech intelligentsia, scientists and cultural figures, and just the citizens who came across were arrested. 1,500 of them were shot, hanged or guillotined. The rest were sent to concentration camps. Lidice became the final court of the Nazi atrocities, but the most notorious one. 2 weeks after the tragedy in Lidice, the Nazis destroyed the village of Lizaki in eastern Bohemia. 42 adults and 11 children were killed there. The village was completely burned down. English miners announced a fundraiser for the restoration of Lidice. Their initiative was supported by many groups and citizens of all European countries and the USSR. As a result, after the war, the village was restored, contrary to the plans of the Nazis. Memory. Of the 153 surviving women from Lidice, many were unable to return to their restored village. Their memories were too painful, because they lost their fathers, husbands, and children there. Of the 17 children who survived the end of the war, only 8-year-old Václav Zelenka returned to his homeland. Subsequently, he even became the mayor of the village. The fate of the remaining surviving children is unknown. Obergruppenführer Karl Frank, Obergruppenführer Kurt Deluge, the traitor Karol Chuda, and other Nazis involved in the events in Lidice were arrested, convicted, and executed. The direct perpetrator, punitive commander Max Rostak, was detained in France in 1951 and extradited to the Czech Republic, where he was sentenced to death. However, for unknown reason, the execution was soon replaced by a life sentence, and in 1960 he was transferred to West Germany. In the restored Lidice, a museum for victims of terror has been opened. In 2000, a bronze monument was erected dedicated to the dead children of the village. Full-length figurines of children, 42 girls and 40 boys.